Yo, what's good at YouTube? It's the No Level Cap podcast. This week we're talking about some of our favorite anime from the 1990s. Yo, what's popping, y'all? Like I said, we about to get into some of these 90s anime, but first, let me get a really quick roll call from y'all. What's good, Terrence?
Hey man, we off the 80s and now we on the 90s. Let's
We
get it.
done with the 80s.
We done with the 80s. Every decade is going to be that way. We done with it.
What's good, Will? What's popping?
Oh, not much, my guy, man. Just sitting here relaxing, just chilling. Just ready to talk about some 90s anime, bro. This is my decade. It was the decade I was born.
Let's go. What's good, Devin? How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. As Terrence said, man, we done with the 80s, man, 90s, man. Young Goku, this y'all go. Your left hand bandit, that's him. But I'm good, man. Talking about some 90s anime, man.
One might even say, Young Goku, he didn't have no beams.
No, right?
I mean, that's an interesting discussion.
Man.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion to be had, actually, because like there's an argument whether Dragon Ball is better than Dragon Ball Z. I guess we can get into that a little bit as we talk about some of our favorite 90s anime. Terrence, you want to go ahead and give us the first one?
All right. I got to go ahead and pay tribute to the anime that got me into anime, the one that started it all for me, and that's Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is considered one of the pillars of anime. It's not like the inventor of the magical girl genre in any way, but it's one of the pillars of that genre. If anything, it's the one that really got things popping. Sailor Moon for me, like I say, it was my first anime. I remember seeing it on like Fox or whatever channel it was on at the time, and it just was so different from the other cartoons that I was watching at the time. I was like, this looks like a cartoon, but it's not, and me at that time, like 5, 6, 7, whatever, had no concept of anime, knew nothing about that. It wasn't until, years later where it came back on Toonami that at that time I knew it was anime. So yeah, but Sailor Moon is incredibly inspired. It's inspired so many mangas, not even ones that are like shoujo or magical girl related, but you see much like Dragon Ball, it's been referenced everywhere. Like it's one of the pinnacles of pop culture in regards to anime. And it's also one of those anime from the 90s where it's considered like quintessential 90s. When a lot of people talk about that 90s anime aesthetic, they point to Sailor Moon because it just has that look to it that is just very defining of its time. And it's also one of the rare instances where you had a remake of it that was more faithful to the manga than the original, but people didn't like the remake as much, and so they just went back to the original. It feels like now people kind of just throw Crystal away and they just focus on the 90s Sailor Moon. So
I think Brotherhood is the only anime that got away with being a remake and it's more popular than the OG. Like all the rest of them, Shaman King, people kind of down Shaman King. They're like, oh, it's moving too fast. Sailor Moon Crystal, like you said. There are a couple others that I'm blanking on right now, but like I know that every time a remake
Hunter count?
Hunter, that's the other one. That's another one that's actually probably more popular as the 2011 version, mostly because nobody saw the 98 version in America. I think if people had seen it, they probably would be more along the lines of like the Crystal thing, where it's like, why are you moving so fast? Oh, we like the filler.
We don't like how the characters look now, even though that's how the manga looked.
I mean, people did try to give it some shade at first for Hunter x Hunter. Like, I remember the scene where Killua ripped the dude's heart out. They were like, why's he got it in a bag? Why doesn't he have the heart in his hand? Like in the OG, I'm like, shut up. That's not really a real complaint. But go ahead, bro.
Yeah, but yeah, Sailor Moon. Well, I will say in terms of remakes, just real quick, that I actually didn't know that the new Spice and Wolf anime, I didn't know that was a remake. I thought it was a continuation of the, it's a remake. I didn't know that. Yeah.
I thought it was a sequel.
Based on what I've heard, it's a remake.
My mind. I thought there was a sequel.
Yeah. You can look it up just to verify. I could be wrong, but I remember reading recently that it is a remake, Which, if that's true, then I mean that's pretty crazy because I thought it was a sequel too.
I mean, you know what though? The Last Spice and Wolf was ages ago,
It's
so
a retelling of the original story.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's sound like a remake to me.
Oh.
Legend of the Galactic Hero. That's another remake that you have people that are kind of on both sides of the fence, where a lot of people who watch the OG are like, "Hey, man, the OG is the one," and then like a lot of people are like, "Shut up, that shit from 1988." So
Yeah, but I know we have a lot to go through, so I'm not gonna take up too much time. But yeah, Sailor Moon, you know, it was my first anime. It's one of my favorite anime. If anything, I'm glad that it was one of my first anime because for one, it allowed for me to see female characters in like leading roles and be the focus of a show rather than, you know, the opposite you would normally get around that time. And yeah, it definitely influenced me a lot as a kid. And yeah, it's definitely one of the best anime of the 90s.
I'm gonna go ahead and get this out of the way. Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah.
That's just
Hey, if you didn't do it, I was going to do it because it was on my list.
I swear I had it on my list too.
I had a feeling that everybody had it on their list, and I was like, I don't know if y'all gonna use it first or not. Look, never mind all that. What I want to say is like probably my path down being a DBZ hater started with watching Yu Yu Hakusho. Because I loved Dragon Ball Z growing up. Like I would like every other kid that grew up in the 90s, like I loved Dragon Ball Z. And then like over time, just the obsession that I had with Dragon Ball Z caused me to ask questions about it. Like, man, why this and why that? Why couldn't Vegeta win a fight? Why couldn't Tien get some spotlight? Like, how come Goku and Gohan, or really just Goku, handle most of the work? Like, why this? What? And then I watched Yu Yu Hakusho and I was like, oh, this is what I was hoping to see. Like a show that has like just well-rounded characters, likable characters. They all get their own moment in the spotlight. They all get their own fights. You know, like Hiei, if you like Hiei, if you think Hiei is a cool motherfucker, you ain't got to worry about him getting hold like Vegeta. He gonna get hella fight scenes, and he gonna look cool in those fight scenes. Even Kurama would get smacked up, and he would always be the one that took the most damage, him or Kuwabara, but a lot of times Kurama, because he was so busy being a nice guy. But like Kurama would be the nice guy, but he was still gonna come out with the dub. And then like he would show you, he was like, I'm the nice guy, and you gonna get about 2 chances. And then after that second chance, that's your ass. And I'm gonna be the meanest, most ruthless guy in the group. Even Hiei put some respect on it. In fact, Hiei was the first person to be like, hey man, you can put some respect on Kurama's name. And so like
Man, y'all that don't know about Yoko.
They didn't know about Yoko. He's like the A-list guy. And they was like, hey man, you don't know about this. You better put some respect on his name. And so even though Yu Yu Hakusho, like if you really want to be critical of it, it's a series of tournaments in a trench coat. I don't care. Like it's just so good. It's so much fun watching those characters because the cast is so much smaller. It is like able to give ample development to everybody. Even characters like Kuwabara's sister had like their own little story arc in the background where you get to like figure out like, okay, this is what's going on with this person. I dug that a lot. I feel like it nailed all the moments that it needed to nail. Is Yusuke turning into a demon a little bit of an ass pull? Yeah, whatever. But I mean, like, Sensui was that guy, bro, and it wasn't no other way he was gonna find a way to win. So I had to give it to him, and I just like the idea of like having a protagonist where the point wasn't, oh, I'm gonna be the strongest guy in the world. The point was like, there's always somebody out there stronger, and like you can't make that your life, you can't make that your existence. And Yusuke was like, I mean, eventually, you know, he got to that last tournament and was like, hey man, not only did Yusuke not win that last tournament, the guy that beat him didn't even win the last tournament. So it's just like, hey man, you just got to learn how to move on and accept, make other parts of your life important and shit like that. And so much of his story was just about finding things that mattered to him, finding things that he was willing to care about. And that right there resonated with me. And I just always like from the first time I saw it, well, not the first time. Like I remember watching the first couple episodes and I was like, this, I don't know. Because I thought he was just going to be dead the whole time. And I knew, like, when he came back to life in episode 5, I was like, where is this show going? And I was hooked from that moment on. And, like, I just remember watching that show on Adult Swim on Saturdays and just being so in love with everything about it. And it, like, kind of like Sailor Moon, it does encapsulate 90s art style. Like, when you see, just like Sailor Moon, when you see a lot of, like, clips of 90s art style, it's probably going to be Sailor Moon or it's going to be Yu Yu Hakusho. Like even Dragon Ball Z, because it's run so long, almost has like a timeless quality to it. And so, like, while you might sometimes see it mentioned in 90s anime, a lot of times, like, they won't, like, for those, like, aesthetic pages and shit, a lot of times you won't see it there because it's so timeless that people just don't think about it as locked into the 90s or the 80s or any one decade, because it's just, it's always been around and it ain't going nowhere. But Yu Yu Hakusho, because it's so finite, when you think about it, you think about just the 90s, and it's so good. Also, some of the best openings and endings in anime history, especially
some
the
of the
first
best
one.
English openings and endings. Yeah.
Some of the last few like English renditions back when we used to do those, and it was just superbly done. Like the singer that did that, Chef's Kiss, she did an excellent job. Shout outs. And so yeah, I had to pick that one. That's one of my favorite animes of all time. So I picked that. Will, you up next, bro? What's your favorite? One of your favorite 90s anime?
One of my favorites 90s anime. I actually wrote down a whole list of them, and I couldn't really narrow it down. But then I thought about something that really got me into something. Something that got me into giant robots. Gundam Wing.
Okay. There we go.
I know I could have easily said G Gundam, but this here, everything about it, just amazing. And yes, I am holding these very old anime legends collected.
Yeah, I remember those. I have the G Gundam ones. Which you mentioned G Gundam real quick. Did you all know that G Gundam was technically before Wing? Like, I didn't know that until looking.
Yeah, the first AU Gundam was G Gundam, which is funny because like Gundam, the original. Yeah. Well, yeah, for us, it's like like Gundam Wing came first.
Yeah.
But what's funny in Japan is like that there was such a big deal about Gundam being like realistic and super serious and political and all that. And the first thing they did when they was like, we're gonna do some AU shit, throw all that bullshit out the window. We're gonna do some Super Robot. Let's go.
Well, I appreciate them for G Gundam, but I definitely appreciate them more for Gundam Wing. Seeing those robots on the screen, recognizing this one on this cover here, recognizing this one in particular, just like, damn, that looks pretty cool. And then I'm like, this is kind of one of those first anime where I kind of got into like a story that was just like, hey, they really getting on to some stuff here that I didn't think I would see at my age or hear at my age, especially after you push homeboy out that ship and then shot him. You know what I'm saying? But
man,
so how did he shoot him?
I'm not gonna lie. There's one thing about Wing that's crazy is like, as a child, some of the stuff I know went completely over my head. It's just it's like I had no idea like what was going on with like the different government factions and everything. I just thought cool robots and like, oh, this seems like a mature plot kind of thing, but not me really getting it.
I think because I'm a little older than y'all. I think the first time I watched Wing was the first time I ever remember like really picking a show apart and thinking about like, okay, this is what this act is, and this is what happens in this act, and this faction shows up in this act. And that was a lot of fun. Like, even though looking back, like if you rewatch it now, it's like it don't hold up. But like at the time, it was everything I needed to like get into like deeper plots and shit.
All right, yeah, like that's really the big explanation for me. It helped me understand like there's deeper things out there to see. I can always sit back and love my Dragon Ball Z at the time. I can always love that for the action and the over the top craziness of it, but when I needed to be just a little taste grounded, there was some Gundam Wing right there for me on Toonami. So Gundam Wing is one of those pretty good shows I enjoyed as a kid, and I'll still enjoy it to this day. Hell, I might even rewatch it this year just to see what's up.
Don't do that. You don't want to do that.
I will say that I remember watching it with some friends, not like recent, but it was within like maybe at least the past 5 to 7 years, and it hadn't aged as poorly as I thought. I mean, that's just my opinion, but looking at it through like an adult lens, it made it interesting just because as a kid, like I said, there were some things that completely flew over my head, but watching it now, or at least close to my age now, it's like, oh, okay, wow, there's a lot going on here.
It's not bad. It's just there's certain parts. Well, it's not terrible, but there are certain parts of it that are bad, and it's just like overly dramatic for no reason. You know, like the part Will brought up where the dude got shoved out the plane, and then they shot him, and you like, bro. I promise you, he wasn't gonna surprise the first part.
I even wanted to make sure he was dead.
It's a cool visual. You know, you like, hey, I'm sick of this bullshit. And you just shoved him.
For me, what's funny about Wing is going back and watching Wu Fei. Wu Fei was Mr. Terrorism, man. He was just going around just committing all sorts of
He's just a bad person.
He was, bro.
Not only was he
Sexist.
Mr. Terrorism, he was sexist as fuck. Like, bro, he's just a
woman.
terrible person. Yeah. How did he
like,
say it?
Nuclear Man.
Yeah, nah. This is
Nah.
worse. Nuclear Man was trying to
He was
put
trying to get
somewhere.
some.
Yeah. Wu Fei, he was like piloting a Gundam and he heard like a chick talk to him. He was like, a woman.
Yeah, he was like surprised.
That man was insulted. He was like, how dare you put a woman if I'm like, what the fuck going on with you, buddy?
I know. I remember
Okay.
early on the show where he got out like I forgot what her name is, who was pretty much kind of became like his love interest in a sense. Whatever, like blue haired woman. Anyway, like where she caught him and he came out the Gundam with his hands up, and she said, "A kid? No way," or something along those lines, and he said, "A
Which
woman."
makes sense.
Now that makes sense.
Just a true
Wow.
villain, bro.
Yeah.
All right, Devin, you up, man. What's your first one?
This one, like, it was at the tail end of the 90s, but man, I thought about this anime and I was at work today. I was actually listening to the opening. One of my favorite openings of all time, Big O, man. I watched this, I think, so as I've said before, I didn't have cable or direct TV as a kid. So my brother was in college. He'd record me stuff on VHS and then bring it home. And I would just have like a just random like collection of shows, cartoons, and animes. And well, actually, I think it was one episode, but then he eventually bought like like a DVD set. This was like later on. But I remember watching Big O, and I'm just like, Will talked about his love for giant robots. I'm positive my like love for giant robots started from Power Rangers with Megazords. And so I'm watching Big O, and I'm like, man, this is like really giving me like a more mature, darker kind of noir vibe of like these thing called Mega Deuces, which is like I think people at one point was making jokes about just like, yeah, it's like it's a cool name, but people gonna make a joke about it's a Mega Deuce. So
I'm just now realizing like what joke you could make. Oh, okay.
yeah. But man, it was I just love this show, man. Like the opening was dope for me. Even though they said Big O like 50 times in the intro, Big O, Big O, Big O. It's like they say Big O like 50 times. They say like one little like.
There's no lyrics in that song. I don't think it's just
it's like
Big O,
there's
Big
one lyric.
O, Big O. Like okay,
It's like there's like one or two lyrics, but it's like in the name of God, ye not guilty. Then it's
cast
like
in the name of God,
Big O.
ye not guilty.
Hey, I'll put it this way: they made for some cold Toonami promos.
Man,
Like when they use
Boy,
that
yes,
Big
it
O, go Big O.
Yeah,
man, that intro gets me so hyped. But I just love the show. I fell in love with it. It was basically to me like anime Batman. Like Roger Smith is basically he's rich. He got the tech. He got the butler. He got the android.
The technology.
Dorothy. It's just like the show was so mysterious, and it felt like Paradigm City was almost kind of like Gotham. I really feel like they were just like we're gonna kind of try to make this somewhat Batman-esque, instead of Roger Smith like going into a suit he puts on like a actual suit, he gets into a big giant robot that comes from his car. And nobody knows that he's the pilot of Big O. But just seeing them like one of the episodes I saw, like seeing them the Big O come out the ground, I was like, first off, this is not.
how you gonna just ruin the city every week?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I guess it's like, okay, pick your poison. They blowing the city up, so me coming out the ground is like I'm trying to stop them.
Hey, he and Domo and Kashu from G Gundam had that same energy where Domo would just store the shining Gundam just anywhere.
Yeah.
That one episode where he stored it in the Statue of Liberty, Rise Gundam, it just blew up the Statue of Liberty.
Hey, she had enough years.
Definitely the same energy, because I mean, they just
Ready whenever.
They just be having regular life, and all of a sudden, Roger come out the ground like, yeah, it's like a manhole just start. It's like, bro, like. But the mystery of it, like there was like this thing where people have lost their memories about. They didn't know where the Megaduces came from. Like, why are these giant robots here? Then you got some that were like sentient and like feral people that knew things that like it was. I love that type of stuff. It's like a thriller. So yeah, I got to give a shout out to Big Old Man because I freaking loved it. I think I'm gonna go watch it again. It was so
I got it on
stylized.
Blu-ray.
It was just dope, man. It was stylized. I mean, kind of had a slight. It's kind of one of those shows that kind of gives me vibes of Cowboy Bebop. And speaking of Cowboy Bebop, Roger was also voiced by Steve Bloom. So it's like anytime some slick suave dude, he's like the perfect guy for that. I mean, you had like besides the fights and the mega dudes, Roger, he was throwing hands every now and then. He had a few gadgets. I think like a little grappling hook, stuff like that. His little car, but
back grapple.
Robot
yes.
assistant.
Yes. So yeah, man, I got to give a shout out to Big O, man. I freaking love that anime.
I like clashed up against Big O because like the I know everybody loved the noir setting of it. I didn't. I always thought it was kind of dull color wise, and like the thriller aspects of it. I was like, I'm not digging this at all. I do find it interesting from the perspective of like Big O. I believe is one of the first anime that America had like a big influence on. Like, because there was only going to be one season, but like Big O was just so popular in America that Japan was like, we give y'all another season. We give y'all another season. And so like that second season, even though it don't wrap up much of shit, really, it just leaves you still with more questions by the end. Even though that is the case, like the only reason we got it is because America just was so passionate for it during that Toonami era when Big O was on TV. Let's see. Will, you're up again, bro.
Oh, okay. So for my next one, let's go ahead and get it out the way. Devin mentioned it, Cowboy Bebop.
I figured.
Yeah, it has to be that one. I consider it one of the best anime I've probably ever watched in my life. I know at one point Cartoon Network or whatever you want to call the company that got them kind of went on like a Cowboy Bebop craze at one point. It was kind of running almost every goddamn night. You pretty much seen the season at least 3 times over before the week was out.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's one of the best anime from the 90s that I feel anyone can kind of get their hands on. I consider it one of the better animes to kind of start in, maybe in like a list of like 20 to 30 anime. It's in that list that you can get to it. Amazing characters, great art, awesome animation, soundtrack's awesome. Everybody has their own story within it, and even the villains themselves in each episode have some bit of a story to them, something that kind of connects them to you or to those characters within the universe. Everything about it is just awesome. So if I had to give it, Cowboy Bebop is like one of the greatest. I even own that show twice on like a physical format. I have the Cowboy Bebop remix DVDs. I got those like over 10 years ago, and I got sent the Blu-ray set for a birthday gift. I really love that show, and I will continue to recommend it to anybody that is in need of watching something that's great.
It's a top tier pick. I mean, like I don't think we were gonna get through this without someone mentioning it because it's just too good of a show.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that show when I was in 8th grade, and it was like Toonami was not Toonami, Adult Swim was just testing out anime for the first time, and that was gonna be one of their first shows. And I was like, well, what's this? Because at the time, since there was no Crunchyroll, and I'm gonna be a little old for a second. There was no Crunchyroll, there was no streaming services. You didn't have easy access to anime. So like if you wanted to see new anime, you just had to try to find it wherever you could. Because like chances are, if you were a child, you didn't have just money lying around that you could just walk into Sam Goody, On Q, any of those places and just be like, hey, I'll just buy a new series. Like it wasn't gonna be none of that. I bought one series growing up that was not this, and I'll bring it up later. What's up, Terrence?
I was gonna say, and with the VHSs at the time, you get like what,
so
maybe
expensive.
3 episodes max on a cassette or on a VHS?
3 episodes. You get 3 episodes to a VHS. That was all you were getting, and so it was like, all right, man, this is an expensive hobby for like a child because they were. I remember, at least for me, because I bought one series. I bought a series that I'll bring up later, but it was like $20 for a dub, $30 for a sub, and you only got 3 episodes. In other words, like very quickly, you're talking $200 for one series, like just for a 26-episode series. Insane. So like I was just excited to see Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, what is this? And just to find something that was that deep and that poignant and that well written with like such layered characters that were just cool as fuck. Like every time you saw an episode of Cowboy Bebop, it was the coolest shit you'd ever seen. Just like all these like the way it was shot, the music that was in there, the way the characters acted, like it knew how to be funny when it needed to be funny, but more often than not, it was just cool as shit. And so it was just so much fun just to experience that the first time. And I know that, like Will said, they ran that bitch into the ground, but like, man, I don't care. Like, even by the end, like I was still like, you know what? The episode of Cowboy Bebop on, go ahead and cut that bitch on. I ain't turning it off. I can tell you that. Terrence, what's your next pick?
So I have a feeling that you, Sage, are probably going to bring this one up. If you didn't, I'd be surprised. Or maybe you just have some others that you feel like would or more should get more shine. But I'm going to go ahead and toss it out there, and it's Outlaw Star.
Outlaw this was never on my list. But I mean, go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
I figure somebody might have it, but yeah, Outlaw Star. You know, it's interesting because a lot of the anime that a lot of us saw in the 2000s comes from the 90s. It's just by the time that it got to us in America, it was the 2000s at that point, or at least like the early 2000s. And Outlaw Star, it was kind of like one of the first Toonami anime where they censored it a lot more than you would think. Like if you go and watch it now, like just the regular version of it, you could see a lot of the stuff that's left out in comparison to what we saw on Toonami at the time. But even with that, it was such a cool show. Just the fact that, for one, it has an adult protagonist and, you know, a rag team of people getting together to do bounty hunting. It was like it's like Cowboy Bebop, but maybe a bit less mature, not like in terms of like content, but mature in terms of like the maturity level of some of the characters in comparison to like Cowboy Bebop with like its subject matter and how it handles its characters and whatnot. But yeah, just their whole journey throughout those like 26 episodes or however long it is, it was really interesting. Had, you know, cool characters. Gene's a cool character. Jim, Suzuka. Yeah, just, I mean, Aisha Clan, like they're all like really cool characters. And when I finally learned about the was it the Hot Springs episode that's like towards the end, because I know they skipped that on Toonami, but when I finally saw that, like I was in college, I think, I was like, wow, there's no way they could have showed this on TV, not without like massively censoring it. And it's funny,
kids in 2001, absolutely.
And it's funny, looking at something like Tenchi Muyo, how they got around censoring the whole bath scenes is crazy. Like, for the longest time, I thought the whole towels were real, but no. They digitally painted those on.
Paid actors. Towels are paid actors.
No, but Outlaw Star is really cool, and I feel like it doesn't get the shine that it should now. Not as many people talk about it in comparison to like a Cowboy Bebop. Like, Cowboy Bebop is considered one of the pinnacles of like 90s sci-fi anime, and it feels like Outlaw Star doesn't really get as much love in that regard. I don't know if maybe it's one of those anime where if maybe it got a remake it would help, but you know, it's also
what it is what Will said. Like, Cowboy Bebop would have been forgotten too if they had stopped running it after like a year or two, but they just never stopped running it.
Kind of like
so
FLCL.
Yeah, and so like generations of fans have been introduced to it. Outlaw Star, I don't know how many of y'all were like on anime forums and like anime spaces online back in the 2000s, but I was like, I used to live on them. I used to live on them in like the late really the whole of the 2000s. And so like Outlaw Star was one of those ones that people like counted as one of the greatest anime, like one of the best anime that had come out. And like what happened was the passage of time.
Yeah.
Like eventually it just became that like a lot of the new generation had never seen it. Cause I mean, it was really only on, like I'm looking at it now, it ran from January 2001 to February 2002. And then that was it. After that, like it was on Adult Swim in 2012, but that shit, it's way too late by then. So like a lot of people just missed that show.
Yeah.
And like you think about it, a lot of the younger millennials and older Gen Z kids, they never saw it. And that's why it doesn't have the same notoriety that you would expect it to have, that it deserves to have.
Yeah, it didn't run as much. And well, it wasn't as long too. That really, like, it wasn't as long or it didn't get run as much, you know, for people to really remember it like that. So yeah, you're right, because stuff like, you know, Yu Yu Hakusho, even though it was showed even though it took them a while to get through the entirety of the series, they eventually did because it had so many episodes. So it, stuck around in the mind a little bit longer. But yeah, I'll give it up to Outlaw Star. I do think it's one of the best anime of the 90s.
I appreciate it because I think the same.
That's a great choice. I bounced off of Outlaw Star. I don't know why. I assume I was being petty about something. Big O, I can when Devin brought up Big O, I could immediately tell you why I didn't like Outlaw, why I didn't like Big O, because I was like, man, I just don't like the colors and the Nor vibe. Outlaw Star, I don't know. Like it seems like as an adult, I'm like looking at it like this should have been my shit. Like it's colorful as hell. It's set in outer space. They go to there's alien cultures and planets and shit. That really should have been my shit. I don't know what the fuck I was on that one because I was like out there. I was just like, it's all right. But I remember people fucking loving it back in the day. Devin, what's your second one?
Another one that I really enjoyed, and it's crazy. I think Devil May Cry actually made me like this because the red trench coat. I didn't watch this till later on, but I'm pretty sure saying red trench coat, you already know what I'm talking about. Trigun. Yeah. Trigun was always like, I would always see this guy with these shades on, these glasses on, this high top, reminded me of Gal from Street Fighter a little bit. I was like, this guy look cool, man. He's got this big gun. I'm like, let me try this out. Man, I watched this anime and I was like, I'm so glad I watched this anime. I want to say this might have been one of the first time I was introduced to like a protagonist that was like, he was that guy, but he didn't like really act like it. He wasn't like, yeah, I'm so, he was just like, I'm just a regular dude, man. I'm just out here just trying to, chilling, traveling, I'm just trying to do my thing, man. But he always found himself in some trouble. He was always trying to help people where he was going to, or people always kind of like wind up getting in trouble because of where he was going. No fault of their own, but that show was awesome, man. I love like the desert setting was pretty cool to me. Just the way they did it, kind of like that it was like a neo-western type. Like it was like old school, but it wasn't like too old school. Also kind of reminded me of Gungrave. What's the character, the guy that had the coffin? Forgot that guy's name, but he
wait, hold on. Wolfwood, Nicholas D. Wolfwood.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you talking about Wolfwood? Okay.
Yes.
I thought you were referring to the Gungrave guy.
When I was like, this man giving me big Gungrave vibes. That was something I always wanted to play, never played it. But this show was just really cool to me. Like again, aesthetic is what drew me to it. The characters looked cool. They always had like every time they advertised it was always just Vash with like a kind of a up close portrait. And he got the pistol. I'm like, this looks freaking dope, man. And then you think like he's just like this, like I said earlier, like he's just like very serious, but he's like goofy,
This world is made for love and peace.
Yeah, he was like so goofy, like, and I think that's one of the things like that's endearing about him as a protagonist. It's like he's this guy. Again, like I said, he's him, but he's also like he's just goofy. You don't think he's like kind of like Goku. Goku is like he's serious, but he's still like, hey guys, you want some rice balls? You want some pizza? It's like he's always joking around. But yeah, man, I gotta shout that one out, man. I hadn't watched it in a while. I think I might go back and rewatch that one. I also was watching the new one that came out. I didn't finish that one, but that one was pretty solid. It kind of even though it's more modern, I think they did a good job of holding up like the essence and just like the aura of like the original show, especially with Vash, because I was kind of concerned like, are they gonna what are they gonna do with this? Are they gonna keep him the same? And they did a pretty good job from the episodes I saw so far. So I gotta shout out Trigun, man. That's a heck of an anime.
Man, you damn right. I remember at one point that like Trigun was considered like part of the Holy Trinity.
Yes.
Long before there was a Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, it was Cowboy Bebop and Trigun, and then you had to see Kenshin. Those were the three that everybody had to see, and God, and they all deserved it. I understand what the author did, what Kenshin's author did, and all that, but like at the time we didn't know that, and so like all three of them top tier anime, and just like some of the greatest characters, and like Devin said, like Vash was like one of the few characters. Vash and Kenshin both were like characters that like it wasn't about training. They ain't had to train. Yeah. It wasn't no I need to get stronger, none of that. Like I'm already the strongest. I'm the strongest motherfucker in the room at any given moment, and the only thing that was holding them back was like the limitations they placed on themselves. Mm-hmm. Like they were both pacifist characters. They sought peace. They didn't really want to box unless they had to. Like Vash would specifically be like, I mean, we ain't got to do this. We get some girls, we get some drinks, we have a good time. And every time somebody was like, I don't care about none of that. What's up with this gun? And then like he would always have to find a way to like beat him. One of the things, like Trigun, just the thing that sticks with me the most, I think, with Trigun was like the death of Wolfwood. Like in a way that even Spike's death doesn't hit. And Spike's death is really good in Cowboy Bebop, but like Spike's death was like him finally being able to make peace with his entire life. And Wolfwood's is like the opposite of that. Yeah. Like I went back and like I've seen that scene like a bunch of times, and I just remember seeing. And at the time I was like, "Wow, this is really sad." But then I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, "This is some of the like it went from really sad to like downright depressing because it just was a man accepting that he had lived a life that he was just not okay with. Mm-hmm. Like everything, all the decisions he had made, he realized he had made the wrong ones. Like he the whole time he was like planning to betray Vash. He realized Vash was a really good dude, realized he couldn't do it. And then he looked at the way Vash lived his life and he was like, I could have done that. Like and he was the whole time he's battling with himself. He's talking about how, oh man, I really like that was such an unrealistic way to live. But then he was like, regardless of how unrealistic it was, I wish I had tried to live up to that kind of ideal. And like the last words he says is, I don't want to die like this. And I was like, oh my God. Like you don't get a lot of deaths like that. Like so often the death is meant to be like, oh, just add some stakes and it just make it, just some dark, like some dude come along, slice a dude's head off, and it's supposed to be like dark and serious, but you don't give a fuck about that character. So it's like, if he did, so what? But like Wolfwood, when he died, it's just that one death. And that and like Trigun and Vash actually like fighting somebody and being forced to kill, and that breaking him as a person, because his whole life he was like, hey man, I ain't about that killing shit. I'm just not a killing motherfucker. And so like, man, God, I love Trigun so much. I could keep on this shows that we saw on Toonami and shows that we saw on Adult Swim. I think I'm gonna have to veer off a little bit. I'm gonna say Sorcerer Hunters. It's a lesser known anime from the 90s. It is the anime that I was talking about earlier that like I bought on DVD. I bought it because I was horny. I was like 12 years old and I was horny, and they showed like these like girls with big titties, and I was like, yeah, I got to get me some of this. And I was like, okay, let me see what it's talking about. But then I watched it, and it was so much more than what I could have expected. Like the fan service was there, but like it didn't take long before I was like, wow, what's beneath all this fan service? And I watched that first VHS tape, and this is something that I feel like most people don't do anymore, just because there's so much content. But like I bought the first VHS tape. My mom's not gonna just buy another one for me just because I like the first one, so I just got to live with it. And I played that first VHS tape so many times that like I watched the first episode like at the start of the pandemic. I was like, I think it was on I think it's Anime Retro, that service, and I was like, oh, I didn't see Retro Crush. That's it. Thank you. But yeah, I like watch it on Retro Crush, and I put the dub on, which is that in itself says something because I don't watch dubs. But like I put the dub on just to see what it was talking about. And like I'm not gonna say, oh man, it's just as good as it was when I was a kid, but it is still good. It's still funny. Like it's still got that same sense of humor. It's got great character designs. And I had watched that first few episodes so many times that I still memorized like half the episode. Like all the lines were still just coming back to me because I'd seen it so many times. And man, it's just such a fun show. It's another one of those shows that faded into the memory because like I was watching a video essay on it not too long ago. And if you haven't seen Sorcerer Hunters, it's about this group of like people that exist in a world where sorcerers have just basically they have power, everybody else doesn't, and they just get to lord their power. It's basically what the Friends of Humanity are afraid the mutants will do. Just use their power to just manipulate and rule over the humans and do whatever they want. And there's only one group of people that are willing to fight back, and it's the Sorcerer Hunters, the main characters. And like, man, even though that's such a boilerplate plot, they make it work through just like having these characters that you just like to see together. And when I was watching the video essay, they pointed out how it had like a pretty sizable fan base back in the day, just because of how likable those characters were, how visually iconic they were. And man, I'm glad that even though it's not what I thought it was when I was a kid, I'm glad that it does. Like when I go back, I still get those same chuckles out of like seeing Carrot, the main character, hit on every girl in sight only for the two girls that actually like him to be like, boy, if you'll cut that shit out and knock the hell out of him. And like seeing them like try to chase down all the different villains and like the different ways that they twist some of the plots just to give you something that you're not expecting. And also a shout out to like the music. We hadn't talked about this much, but like the music on Sorcerer Hunters in particular is just great. Like there's this, it shouldn't be that good. And it reminds me of a time where like a lot of times you'd get like really great top tier composers on older anime. Like a lot of like, you'd be like, oh wow, this theme is really good. And you look up who the composer is and they turn out to have worked on hella other shit. And I think Sorcerer Hunters is another one of those type anime because like so many of the theme, like the opening theme is some of the catchiest shit you'll ever hear. The closing theme is actually Flames too. And then just like some of the insert theme, well not insert, but some of the background music is just like really beautiful in a way that like if you watch the fan cert like an ecchi style harem adventure today, you wouldn't get that. Like you get like just some boring ass like some music that you'd hear in the episode and forget by the end. But this was like, nah, like this, it stuck with me. And I actually went to the trouble of finding the BGM not too long ago. So, but yeah, that's going to be my second one. Will, you up for the third one, bro?
All right. So for the third one, when Sage said he didn't want to age himself, he said something about Sam Goody. I used to have a Sam Goody here, back here in Greenwood. And I had there was this guy there. His name was Mark. Used to always keep stuff in line for me. Whenever I wanted something, I would call the store. If he was there and he'd be like, hey, this is Mark. I'd be like, hey, man, could you hold this to the side for me? And one day I went and got something I wanted. I got a game because he was holding it for me when I got there. And then I went to the anime section. I seen this show that I did. Well, today I learned it was actually from the 90s, the very late part of the 90s. But I bought this set. It was only like the first like maybe 5 or 6 episodes. It was on DVD at the time. Excel Saga.
Yeah.
Hey.
that was one of the first things I ever bought anime wise on DVD as a child, like way back then. And I watched those first set of episodes, and I kid you not, I have never laughed so hard in my life at an anime as much as I did at Excel Saga. And really, to even give you a synopsis of the plot would be a task because the way that show goes off the rails immediately in the first episode with her getting hit by Truck Chan or Bus Coon, I promise you. After that, it just goes down this straight like toilet of humor, but it's a good humor if I had to say so myself. It's not like extremely trashy humor, and it's one of the shows I would say if you want to watch it in sub, be that way. But if you watch it in dub, you're going to get everything under the sun, and it's going to have you on the floor.
Yeah.
Especially like that last half. And I just learned recently that they only aired 25 of the 26 in Japan because apparently the last episode was apparently too violent, too obscene, and too long.
I think I've heard that before.
And I was like, really? I was like, maybe I need to see what the last episode was again because I do have it on DVD. But it's a show. It's a show and a half, if I had to say so myself, from Excel just being the most hyperactive thing you ever seen on the screen. Hyatt being the beauty that she is, despite the fact that I think she's anemic and she always passes out at like the weirdest times. Lord Il Palazzo just trying to rule the world, but he can't because he kind of sucks at it. And and there's another character in there, the Great Will of the Macrocosm. Silliest character I've ever seen in my life. It's a floating galactic old with arms. Y'all need to check that out. Please check out Excel Saga. It's some of the silliest shit you'll ever see. Watch it in dub. I promise you will get a good laugh out of that show.
One thing I'll say about that is I feel like that was one of the first like parody anime that we really got in America. Not saying there weren't ones before, but I feel like that was one of the first more high profile ones. Yeah, because I just remember watching that anime and it's like, this is so off the wall and just like totally the opposite of a lot of the anime that I've seen.
Exactly.
I didn't know what I was watching at that time.
I didn't.
The other show probably would be Martian Successor Nadesco. That was another like strong parody anime.
Yeah.
It was like more mecha focused, but it was also a parody.
That
was the one. I didn't see much of Excel Saga. I just knew it was like a legendary parody anime. Yeah. And then Nadesco was the one that I was like, okay, well, if we parodying mecha, I'm gonna go with this one. I'd have a good time.
I know, but I'm gonna tell you now, Sage, coming from me, bro. I know you ain't seen much of Excel Saga, but Give it a little more chance.
I watched a video essay on it not too long ago, and so I'm probably gonna go back for it.
It is a very silly fucking show. Watch it dubbed. I swear to you, that voice actress had excelled going crazy.
I'm with it. Devin, what's your third, bro?
Well, I can't say my favorite 90s anime without saying this one. What's weird is I used to see this when I would get off the bus at my cousin's house, watch it after Dragon Ball, and never really cared too much for it at the time. It was on, it looked cool. I was like, this looks cool, it's animated. But then
the hams?
It's Hamtaro time.
I'm pretty sure when Hamtaro came on, I was like, I'm leaving. I was like, this is kind of cool.
Turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off. I need some Kamehamehas flying across screen. But after it's One Piece. I'm resident One Piece fans. And I know it's it's weird. I was talking about anime to a guy at work last week, and he mentioned one. We were talking about One Piece, we were talking about Naruto, some stuff that he said he liked that he first started watching. And I used to watch One Piece, and I was like, man, like I'm not sure what this is. Like I would see this little kid, he's just like very like, he's high spirited and like goofy, stretching around. I'm like, okay, this is cool, whatever. But I never got into it. I didn't get into One Piece until I got into college, and that's when it like really got its hooks into me. And I know I kind of share the same sentiment that a lot of people do when they first watch the show. It's like it's kind of hard for them to get in. Like for a few, maybe like I think it maybe took 20 to 30 episodes for me to kind of get really into it. But some people are like, man, I don't know. I'm like, just keep with it, man. Just keep with it. It's like it's going to more than reward you the more you keep watching this. And I know that's a daunting task to ask. That's something that's like over 1,000 episodes right now. But it's like, and it's like
Lord.
but it's such the whole like team camaraderie, like finding all these new members, these new pirate members that Luffy recruits to his team. Everybody got different specialties. You got Zoro, he's the no direction having 3 swords wielding swordsman. He can beat up some people all day, but you ask him like, hey, can you show me the nearest Burger King? He's like, I don't know where it's at, man. I can't show you where the burgers are. You got Chopper, you got Brook, all these different characters come together. One thing I like about One Piece the most is just the character design for me. There's so many different characters, so many abilities, all these admirals, all these warlords, and it's just like, bro, everybody got these devil fruit powers. I think that's one of the things that I liked about it the most is like having these devil fruit powers gives you the ability to just like you kind of write characters that are somewhat like really OP. Like you got characters that are super OP, but a lot of times you won't see them till later on. You even got some characters that are OP that don't even have devil fruit powers. Examples, Shanks. He's just, hey man, I'm that dude. His hockey is just so powerful. People just fall out as he walks around.
And at that time, we didn't even know about hockey.
Exactly. and he showed it like in the first few episodes when he got his arm bit off. It's like, oh, that's what that was. That creature was like, oh, my bad, bro. I ain't know that was you, Shanks. My bad. If I known, I wouldn't have come in. But yeah, man, that show is it's such a wild ride, man. I mean, you watch it up until the time skip, like right before that, all that happens, the fight between Bartholomew. That was ridiculous. You got Zoro going to get trained by some sword wielding gorillas that have been trained by Mihawk. It's just a lot of stuff that goes on. There's a lot of stuff that happens.
I'm sorry. The image in my head, bro.
It was just the wildest thing. Like Zoro gets, he's like, "You want me to fight these monkeys? Okay." And then these monkeys are like just as skilled as Mihawk. He's like, "Oh, my bad. I guess I gotta fight them now." But I think ultimately one of the things that really sold it for me is just the fact that I felt like I was watching an RPG play out. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. I'm a big RPG fan. And I was like, man, this would make a great RPG. We've got some RPGs from One Piece. Nothing stellar, but I was like, this story, like what's going on, the traveling through different places, going the Grand Line, doing all this feels like an RPG to me. So I think ultimately after watching it, that was the thing that really I said this is what sold me on this, is because I felt like I was playing an RPG but just in anime form. So gotta shout out One Piece for me, man.
Man, I don't have no long anecdotes for One Piece because I ain't watched One Piece like that. I ain't no One Piece fan. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna front. What I do think is interesting is how no shade to One Piece, but I think it's fascinating the historical revisionism people have done with One Piece to act like it was always one of them ones in the 2000s, and I'm like, no, it was not. No, it was not. It got popular in the 2010s as people started watching it on Crunchyroll and it's streaming and shit. But like that shit was not one of them ones in the 2000s because it had that 4Kids dub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like had One Piece been on Toonami earlier instead of 4Kids, then yeah, I think that would have definitely changed the course of history.
I agree.
Would have did it.
Oh, you mean?
But I mean, like
the lollipop instead of the cigarette?
Yeah, the lollipop.
Yeah, like had Funimation started dubbing it from Jump instead of 4Kids, then yeah. Just because 4Kids was only gonna go so far.
Right.
Well, that was the problem. They went too far. All the edits was always a mess, boy. They giving people random accents they don't need to have. It's like, man, it felt like it got to a point where every character had an accent. It felt like in some of the anime, and I'm like, I don't know this many people with accents in real life. Like, what are y'all doing?
Terrence, that's the thing about dubbing back then is that they didn't know like certain like cultural things, like how to communicate that for like an American audience, and so yeah, they felt like a lot of those accents and whatnot were the way to go about it.
They were just, I mean, like it was like a more of a Wild West back then anyway, so everybody was kind of figuring things out.
There's no like standard to things.
Definitely not. Terrence, what's your third one?
So for the third one, I'm going to go with an anime that a lot of people don't really consider anime in the traditional sense. Kind of like how with Pokemon. Pokemon is very much an anime, but a lot of people don't really consider it an anime just because it felt more like a cartoon in the way that it was, for one, run on Cartoon Network. It was just treated like just a regular cartoon running along with the other stuff. The way that Pokemon looks and like the way that a story is told just doesn't feel like very Japanesey in the traditional sense, if that makes any sense at all. Especially, I mean, it doesn't help that they removed a lot of those elements when they dubbed it, like they turn, rice balls into donuts and stuff like that. So
jelly donuts.
That was just the thing back. That was the style at the time. That was the thing that they did back then with the dubs, just because they weren't sure how to properly translate some of the more cultural stuff. But anyway, the anime that I'm talking about is Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh for me Yu-Gi-Oh had me in a chokehold as a kid. Like not only the card game, but the anime as well. When like I was watching Yugi go to Duelist Kingdom and like defeat different opponents, and just wondering how the animes, the way they played the game in the anime was so different from how it was in real life. Devin can attest to this. Back when we played Yu-Gi-Oh together, we had times when we played like by show rules, and then when we finally learned better, we started playing by like the actual game rules. So there were times when we were summoning yeah, we were summoning blue eyes and dark magicians, no sacrifices. We had
that was such a wild era because even the games were confused.
Yeah,
like you go back and play Forbidden Duelist or whatever, and it's like you just
the Game Boy games.
The Game Boy games too. The Game Boy games had weird rules, but like the first PlayStation game, Forbidden Memories, man, what the fuck? Like some of them rules was just so weird, and you could just like slap down Blue Eyes just out of nowhere, and everybody was like, "Okay, that's fine," and I'm like, "Hell no, buddy, what
no, it's not."
Yeah, I remember. I can't remember what it was called, but there was a GBA game, or maybe even just a regular Game Boy Color game.
Are you talking about Dark Duel Stories?
Actually, that's it. Dark Duel Stories. I had that one, and it had a weird rule set too. It wasn't the actual way that you play. But putting all that aside, Yu-Gi-Oh, I mean, it was a cultural phenomenon during the 2000s for a reason, not just because of the card game, but because of the anime as well. It got multiple movies that kind of like in the same way like Pokemon, how Pokemon had multiple movies that did well. Yu-Gi-Oh was very much the same, not to the same level, obviously, but it was a success in its own right. people still play Yu-Gi-Oh to this day. I have no idea what's going on with the card game today. Like, there's so much stuff that they added. I quit about somewhere into the 2010s, like maybe the early 2010s is around the time where I was like, all right, I'm gonna put the cards up for good, just because it was at the point where they were making so many changes that I just couldn't keep up, and a lot of older stuff was starting to get out of date. So
yeah,
I mean, card games are one of those things where you have to continuously spend money to keep up with, the meta and everything. And at a certain point, hey, if you're a broke college student, you can't afford to be buying all those cards. So I had to make a choice there. But yeah, the anime, I was always entertained by it. Whether it was Duelist Kingdom, Battle City, and then the arcs after that, I always enjoyed watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was definitely one of those shows that as a kid, I ran around imitating. I wanted the dual disc. I wanted to, anytime we were doing duels, I wanted to be able to put the cards in and, do them the way that the disc was.
Did anybody have that?
I did have it at one point, yeah.
I did not have that.
How was the toy?
I mean, it was just, flimsy plastic, but it was like, just the novelty of it was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it was very bulky because if like you hit it to like fold out, it's just very for like a smaller kid, it's a lot. I'll put it that way.
It'll weigh you down.
Having a dual disc like having an Apple iWatch, man. Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And then they had the one from what was it, the Dragon's Arc with what's my man, not Dice, the blue haired guy,
Doma.
I forgot what he was called in English, but yeah,
the blue haired guy.
Red Vest? Or are you talking about someone else?
I forgot what the arc was called. It was like Rise of the Dragons or something like that. I can't remember.
The Orichalcos dude?
Yeah. The Orichalcos people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that arc. Anyway, they had a different dual disc for that arc. The one that kind of like folded out. Well, not folded out, but like you could pull it out instead of it kind of being split into two and coming together.
I see what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, they marketed that one as well. That one wasn't as successful just because it wasn't, it didn't quite have the cool factor as the other one. But anyway, Yu-Gi-Oh! I thoroughly enjoyed it as a kid. Like I said, it's one of those anime that I feel like people don't really recognize as anime in the same way, just because, you have your Pokemons, your Digimons and stuff like that. Those are not viewed as like traditional anime, even though they very much are. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, and I played it for over a decade. Like, I was deep into it in the 2000s and then also in the early 2010s. So I stuck with it for a very long time. It was one of the staples of my childhood. As Devin can attest, we were definitely throwing cards down in school.
Came late to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Party because I didn't have Kids WB, and so I had to wait till it came on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, same. In some regards,
Cartoon Network was always weird because, like, as far as I know, they only ever aired the Duelist Kingdom arc, and I don't even think they finished that. And I know I believe they never aired the Battle City arc. I think I just saw it, and if they did, I certainly never saw it. I saw it on
I remember seeing the Battle City arc.
It kind of went back and forth. Yeah, like it was, I don't know if it was a rights thing or what, because like they showed part of it on Toonami on Cartoon Network, and then it went back to Kids WB. Yeah,
it debuted and aired weekly on Kids WB, and then it came to not to Toonami but to Cartoon Network. It would air like 7 o'clock or something like that, Central, and like it aired on there for a while, and then like maybe it got to the Battle City, but it definitely didn't finish. And then finally they was just like, fuck it, GX, and they put GX not on Toonami because Toonami was on weekends by then.
Magoozy.
They put it on you got it, Magoozy, fuck ass show.
I do remember they did Battle City, but they did it at, if I'm remembering correctly, they did it when Toonami was going to the Saturdays format, and I think they had it in like
you might be right.
I think they had it in like an hour block where they would show 2 episodes of like the Battle City arc, and I think they eventually got through that, but they never really went past that. I think after that point, it all still went to Kids WB, and then it finished on Kids WB.
Yep. That sounds accurate. So I definitely remember that. And then like I got into it with that, and then through GX, I was like, oh, okay, now I can get to watch it every day, just to see what it's talking about. And then Jaden was such a goofy ass character that I was like, I don't know about this nigga. And then finally 5Ds came out. But by the time 5Ds came out, 4Kids started kind of falling, and I didn't have to watch it dubbed anymore, so I just watched it subbed, which was the right choice. Jack Atlas sounds like a fucking boss in that. I love the way they do the synchro summon chants and shit, because I never got a chance to play the card game because I was always like, nobody I knew was into the card game. So I never got a chance to play it until I came to college. And in an interesting twist, because I was so late, I played it in college all the way up to 2016, I think. Right before they introduced Link Monsters and the last proper Yu-Gi-Oh anime before they switched. Because what eventually happened is they made a whole new anime, or they made a whole new game, and then now the new anime series are based on the new game. So,
yep.
But I really did love Yu-Gi-Oh growing up, seeing it, in high school and shit. It was a lot of fun, just like how weird it was, and it's just so much. It's so funny now because there are so many card game anime. There's still Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's Go Rush now. There's Card Fight Vanguard, which is apparently about to be on season 2 very soon. And then there's Shadowverse. There's Shadowverse Flame right now. And they all have to follow the same kind of formula of, hey, we about to have some tournaments. And then midway through the series, they're like, hey man, we gotta save the world with these cards now. The villains, they showing up. They got plans for world domination. And the only way we're gonna stop them is with our cards and our monsters that we've made friends with. And you like, man, what the fuck? Bro, can't this just be about some cards and tournaments? And they like, no, we got to save the world with these cards. But yeah, I fucked with Yu-Gi-Oh heavy, and that was definitely that was on my list. But I mean, I probably wasn't gonna pick it, so I'm glad you picked it, Terrence. We'll do a lightning round in just a second, but I guess my last one is gonna be Tenchi Muyo.
Yeah, I think that's coming.
Yeah.
Man, a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have picked Tenchi Muyo. But it's such a weird thing because I was on Twitter during the pandemic and I was looking at somebody basically recount Tenchi Muyo, and I started watching clips because they put up so many clips, and I was like, damn, I kind of remember this. Maybe I should go back and rewatch it. Man, I went back, rewatched it in dub, and the dub, even though again, I'm not a dub nigga, but the dub had a certain level of charm to it. And I was like, okay, I'm going back, and I had a flashback, and I had this moment where I did a deep dive into Tenchi Muyo lore, which is the most batshit insane thing ever. Because Tenchi is not just the most powerful character, he's a god that stands above all the gods, but he hadn't ascended into his godhood powers yet. It's just so absurd. And then there's 2 other Tenchi timelines that ain't got nothing to do with that. There's a spinoff that's set in space. There's the creator, the original creator of Tenchi Muyo has done multiple other anime. They all somehow tie into Tenchi, and protagonists somehow, for whatever reason, always look like Tenchi.
Does Duel count that? Does Duel Parallel Universe, does that count? Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Duel counts. He did some hentai. That counts apparently. I don't know how hentai the hentai is. I don't know if it's getting into if it's softcore, hardcore, or whatever. But I know it's canon to that universe.
Wow.
Tenchi Muyo GXP, and then there's a couple others on top of Duel. The Isekai, the Tenchi Muyo Isekai, that's about Tenchi's half brother. I forget what the full title is called. But yeah, they're all, and it's just such a fun, weird universe that you just get to settle into. And it's probably one of the few harem series that I like. Probably because in most harem series they have the girls mad at the main character for other girls liking him. That nigga can control that shit. But in Tenchi Muyo, they always be hitting on him and then mad at each other, which is, it shouldn't be a harem in the first place, but if it's going to be one, that makes the most sense. Hey, get away from my man. No, you get away from my man. That shit. Yeah. And it's and then eventually, as the longer you watch it, they just start getting along. They're like, hey man, I'm here, you here, we ain't going nowhere. Fuck it. And just seeing the family dynamic develop. And it's just there is no show quite like Tenchi. Especially the OG Tenchi. Of course, there's Tenchi Universe, which is the TV version of it. That one is its own thing, and that's good in its own way too. So the fact that they were able to do 2 separate timelines about the same characters with the same basic bones of a story, and for it to be so vastly different from one another is really dope. And then just the weird way of how it can be both this science fiction show like, and also like this down to earth slice of life show that talks about like family lives and like bloodlines and like who's getting along with who inside the village and this and that. Like that shit is entertaining in a way that I can't get that anywhere else. And so yeah, definitely Tenchi Muyo is just a favorite. If not just for nostalgia, just for the fact that like I did go back and rewatch it and it did hold up. So all right, real quick.
I just gotta say though, thank you for mentioning that because that's like one of my favorite like harem like shows. Because I like over like the pandemic, like when it started, I started collecting like DVD sets for the show. Like I have the movies, the OVA universe in Tokyo. I have it.
You could have kept. You shouldn't have bought Tokyo. That was a waste of money.
That's crazy.
I tried to go back and rewatch it. They made so many changes. I'm like,
Tokyo is wild because Tokyo's the one where he has that other girl, right? The black-haired girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one I had a lot of issues with it. For one, they make Ryoko and Ayaka in that one. Their personalities are too much.
Yep.
They're too into Tenchi. They're so into Tenchi that they don't really get their own development in that show. It feels like not in the way that they did in the other ones, anyway. In my opinion.
Sakuya, that was the name of the black hair girl.
Okay.
Yeah, but I agree. Like it's so stripped down by that point, and for whatever reason, instead of using one of the two existing continuities they had, like you could have picked one. Instead, they were like, "Nah, we're gonna make a brand new." And it's like, "Nah, did nobody ask for that?" It's so weird, and like I'm just so glad that didn't stick. The other ones did. Tenchi Universe is more of a condensed. If you want to get like the basic ideas of Tenchi, you can watch that. Tenchi, the OVA is like the batshit. Look, man, sometimes you may have to go online and look up the translations of the light novels to figure out what character they're referencing. And like it's the one that's got as much lore as you could ever ask for and more, way more. Mm-hmm. And it's still going. That's the weird thing about Tenchi. It's still going. I think the last OVA happened sometime last year, and that was not confirmed to be like the final OVA. It's one of those things where they're struggling with the budget, and so when they get the money, they're like, we'll make some new ones, but like you don't get them often. But just the fact that there's like I think 30 episodes at this point, and it spans from like the 90s to like today is just wild. Real quick, the lightning round. Will, what you got for us?
All right, then. So quickly for my lightning round, let's start with Magic Knight Rayearth. Let's start with that. That's a pretty dope one. And the only reason I end up knowing about it is when I found out it had a video game at one point in my life, and I was like, okay, that's pretty dope. But then I found out it connected to a show. Awesome show. I have it on DVD. I got that on collection. I don't have a second season. I need to find my way to that. I know it's in a black box somewhere out here in someone's house on eBay. I'm buying it soon. I'm gonna get that. Another one I want to throw out there, Monster Rancher, because I happen to be scrolling on the internet and I seen a picture of Suezo, and I was like, wait a minute, this was the 90s too. And I enjoyed that a lot. I remember playing the video game for that one a lot too. I rented it from Blockbuster, and it was like, "Hey, if you open it up when you're doing this, you get a monster off the CD." I thought that
you
was
played
really
the
dope.
game like the name.
Yeah, yeah, man. Monster Rancher was like really fun. It was almost like a little. I was turning up to kind of like Pokemon in a way. I thought it was really fucking cool to like watch that play out. And one more, I'm gonna throw a real off the wall. I'm gonna throw two more actually. Magical Girl Pretty Sammy. I ended up watching that in college from my then girlfriend because she had the DVDs, and I was like, let me go ahead and watch this off of you real quick. And I was just like, this is part of the fucking Tenchi Muyo universe too, ain't it? And I'm pretty sure it is, since you just mentioned all the stuff that they've done is kind of bad. Yeah, it was a really silly Magical Girl show. It had like some implications of some serious stuff, but because it's Asami and she's a bit of a klutz, even though she's a sweetheart, stupid stuff will happen to her when she's doing her job or shit getting wild and everything. I enjoyed that. And one, I want to ask y'all about something real quick before I finish. Y'all know about that gif of like that man dodging the bullets with his body going crazy? That one.
Oh yeah, when he's doing like
yeah, he's doing
weird,
the.
I mean, obviously, I can't replicate that myself, but I know the gif you're talking about.
So, every time I seen that gif, I always thought that was like a much older show than what it was, and I decided I'm gonna look at a few episodes of it. Come to find out, that's like a mid '90s show. It's called Jungle King Tarzan.
Oh, man. Hey, that was a continuation of what Sage was talking about, how they were still making anime out of fairy
novels
tales and
books.
whatnot.
Yeah.
I saw that in the 90s too. When I was looking through the live charts, I saw like a bunch of those.
Yeah, I seen a lot, and a lot of video game related shit was in there too. Let's not talk about it like Wild Arms and whatnot. I was like, that's kind of wild. I didn't even know that happened. But yeah, Jungle King Tarzan. I watched the first few episodes of that. This man got a best friend named Ane Baba that he fights. It's a black man, just almost like him in a way, almost Tarzan-esque like him, and he rides a zebra, and that's who he be fighting out there. And the first episode involves Tarzan saving a young lady from an alligator. And you see him take the alligator down and in the water. He's not even fighting it. He's just tickling it. And then you find out he's married to Jane. You see what she looks like in the opening. She looks really prototypical hot model type body, right? When you get to it, she's kind of more like a egg with the stereotypical. She's more like a big egg-shaped body, big lips, and like she looks mean. She looks like one of those stereotypical fat anime characters.
What?
I'm so serious. Everything I'm telling you is what Jungle King Tarzan is.
What's going on with this anime?
I'm confused as a motherfucker.
And at the end of the episode, Tarzan and his best friend fight it out. And the young girl he saved was like, hey, throw the fight. You can get rid of your wife and you can get me. He fought it out naturally. The black dude seen them come out because Jane was chasing a young girl. He was like, you know what? I don't even want to fight no more. She don't look good. She ugly now. And he left after his zebra came and landed from the sky after he threw him up. I promise you. Once you watch an episode of this shit, it's wild. Apparently it had a nice popularity and it had some video games too. So Jungle King Tarzan, just one of the most left field animes I've ever seen in my life, bro.
Yeah, I mean, that just reminds you how weird anime can be, or it definitely was back in the 90s. Devin, what you got for us, man?
I wanted to pick this one in my top three. I kind of hate it. Well, I ain't gonna say I hate it, I didn't, but I knew either Sage or me was gonna mention this one, but I have to acknowledge Yu Yu Hakusho's one of my absolute favorite animes. I know I've at least watched it full through 2 or 3 times. I don't do that for many anime. It's just such a great anime, such good atmosphere, characters. All the characters are likable in their own certain ways. As Sage mentioned, you got Hiei's I'm the dude. I don't care. If I fight you, it's over with. You got it just, man, I just love this show, man. I just can't stop. I just couldn't stop watching it at one point. So I got to at least mention it. Rurouni Kenshin, I really enjoyed that one when I watched it. It's been a long time since I watched Rurouni Kenshin, and I haven't watched the newer one. But man, I don't know if I heard about it from some friends. I might have heard about it from Terrence or somebody, but I was like, check this out. Watch it, absolutely loved it. Just the anime about a samurai swordsman, that's in itself to me is already interesting. So, and he as a character was a lot more interesting than I thought. Just a guy with a sword would be. And the last one, I'm just kind of surprised nobody said this one, but this was another craze back in the 90s when we were in school, Terrence. Digimon.
I had it on my list.
Yeah.
It's another thing that got us in it, which was crazy because at the time we got into the card game, it didn't stick because Pokemon was still just dominating in like the card sector. They released like some structured deck like little packs, but
the Joey Yuga Kaiba decks.
They were cool to have, and nobody even learned how to play the game. But the show was really like the real meat and potatoes. Still one of the best intros. Digimon, like that song was. You hear that song, I'm like, it's hype, man. I would get off the bus and watch it. I'm like, man, this is television right here, man.
Does anybody watch the remake?
It's my Digimon Adventure.
I know that it's very different because the way that they tell the story on that one. I remember watching the first episode and I was like, whoa, this is a massive retelling of the story. Like they make decisions that are like totally different from the original.
A Final Fantasy remake on it?
It essentially in some way is. Like they the first episode like has Omnimon in it, if I'm not mistaken, and it's pretty
way
in game this early.
If I remember that
What are we
first episode
doing?
correctly, yeah, because like the way they get into the digital world is a bit different, I think. Yeah, so it's not like a 1-for-1 remake of the OG one. They definitely do their own thing with it.
Okay.
I've been told part of the problem with Digimon Adventure is that they focus too much on Tai and Agumon. Like they just feel like the not just the they're not just important, they're like the only important one. That's a big complaint that people had.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not as much focus on it. Kind of has
On
that
the rest of the crew.
maybe like that Sailor Moon Crystal effect, whereas like the OG one, because it had like more, it was more episodic, and it allowed it to build up the characters of the other scouts more, whereas like Crystal, since it's like straight on with the manga, is more so focused on like Usagi than like the other ones. And so yeah, with the remake of Digimon, it's kind of like that in a sense, huh? Where
Yeah.
That's so weird though.
On Tai.
I think they just focused on Tai because he's like the main character.
Yeah.
And so they just decided to prioritize it. But it's weird to me because like it's not based on anything. It's based on like the little handheld game, the knockoff Tamagotchi. It's not like it's based on like an actual manga that I know of. And so like what are you copying? Like there's nothing to be faithful to other than the OG anime. So like why would you just, and then it ran for so many episodes. I think it ran for either 52 or 65, or that's a lot of episodes for you to like gloss over all the other characters.
Movies, so yeah.
Well, the Tri movies are sequels.
Yeah.
Like flat out sequels. This was just like a reboot from the start. So I'm like, I don't know what they were doing. But I mean, like, you know, we finally moved on. They're finally doing Digimon Adventure 2, like movies for that now. So so everybody, Terrence, what about you, man?
So a lot of the ones that have been mentioned, like Yu Yu Hakusho, Gundam Wing, those are definitely on my list, and you know, highest props to them. Yu Yu Hakusho is arguably my favorite anime of all time, and Gundam Wing is what got me into Gundam and just mecha in general. So I have to give huge props to it. The only other anime that I'll mention is, and this one is kind of like a surprise pick, just because not too many people probably really think about this anime like that. And that's Street Fighter 2 V, the animated series. Like Street Fighter 2 V, I remember watching it on Action, and for a series that really at that time didn't have like the deepest of lore to it, not really. I mean, I think they were kind of getting there with the Street Fighter Zero / Street Fighter Alpha series, but with this animated series, it was still within that Street Fighter 2 universe. And so there was like some stuff that I don't think really had been established like that just yet. But seeing how they did it with that series, it was really fascinating, just from the way that Ryu goes about learning how to do the Hadouken, how different Chun-Li is depicted in that show. Like, she's not a detective where her father had been killed or anything. Like, she's still a kid. In fact, all of them are like in their late teens. They're like 17 or 18, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Like Ken, Ryu, and Chun-Li, they're all, maybe Ken and Ryu were maybe like early 20s, and Chun-Li was like 17 or something like that, because she was younger in that show in comparison to how she actually is in the video game. But the fights were good. Music, I remember the Hadouken theme. Like, man, that theme is so cool. But yeah, I think that's an anime that kind of slides under the radar that not a lot of people talk about. I remember watching it multiple times on like the Action or Encore channel, whichever one it came on, and I thoroughly enjoyed it at that time. And I wasn't even like the biggest Street Fighter guy at that point, but you know, I recognized the characters, and you know, I played a little bit of it on the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, so I knew enough. But watching that series, it made me an even bigger fan and made me want to get more into the game. So I'll give props to Street Fighter 2 V. I really enjoyed it.
I think that's a good pick. Definitely that, because like that was another thing. Like Will brought it up. We had like a video game era, just an era of like video game adaptations. But I think Street Fighter probably stood at the top. I guess for me, a minor. First off, I guess a really minor shout out for Variable Geo, just as a little joke. A very old school anime, a little ecchi, lot ecchi. There was just some really cool fight scenes in that I just enjoy. And just some of the music was really good. They had some good musical choices. Definitely the opening and endings really good. I bought that also because I was like a horny teenager. and it was only later that I was like, okay, I see what this is about. And like, I wouldn't call that as like no great anime, and there are definitely a lot of anime that I would, in other situations, give a highlight to. But that was one that I'd seen a lot compared to like something like an Escaflowne, which I didn't see much of at all.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
Same,
I mean, like it aired on Fox Kids, but it was like heavily edited, and like I wasn't really feeling it at the time, so I can't really hype that one up like I would want to. Magic Knight Wraith is another one that I would like to hype up, but I haven't really seen a ton of, so I couldn't. And then what is it? Master Keaton is also another really good one that I've not seen. I've only seen like one episode.
Good
like, Utena is like that for me. Revolutionary Girl Utena. I wish I probably could stand to go back and watch that one because I hear like that is one of the best anime of the 90s, and it's still very much referenced today in regards to being like one of those quintessential LGBTQ type of anime that a lot.
It's heavily referenced in Witch from Mercury, from what I understand. So
yeah, I've heard that that's pretty much Gundam meets Utena.
Yep.
Gundam Utena.
As far as like my actual picks, I'm gonna go ahead and get a little obscure with mine now, because most of my other ones were pretty, except for Sorcerer Hunters, were pretty like well known. I'm gonna go with You're Under Arrest. That one's a good one. Instead of Patlabor, You're Under Arrest. This is another. It's like a seinen actually, where it follows just like these group of girls that are a group of young women that are running this like police station, but like they don't handle serious crime. They only handle like traffic crime and shit like that. And you would think that would be boring, but it's just not, like, because the characters are so over the top and they're fully fleshed out first off. So like you get to see them have conversations, not just about work, but about their love lives and like their other goals. And you get to meet their families and things like that. And so that's really cool. But also just like they have a way of shooting things. Like there's an episode in the OVA, at least, well, certainly in the OVA, but also in the regular series. There's an episode in the OVA that's like really well shot. It's about like the two main characters trying to get a pregnant cat to a veterinarian in the middle of a monsoon, and yet at the same time they're also dealing with like this jackass that always comes out during the monsoons, and he likes to race people, and he'll like do all types of weird unsafe shit on the road while he's racing you in the middle of a fucking monsoon. And like there's like the way that they shoot it, the way the music's handled, everything is just so cool and so dramatic, even though it's dramatic without ever being over the top, but it's so much fun. And then like you have also like other silly shit like Strike Man, who's like this guy who's like fed up with like people who don't want to follow the law, and so he just dresses up in a costume and carries a big baseball bat and clocks people upside the head for breaking the law. But it's always like little small you out here littering, and he hits you upside the head with a baseball bat or like a ball. Like that shit is so much fun. So that one's one of my top ones. And then of course, what is it? If I'm talking anime, what's an anime recommendation show without I mentioned Macross 7? It's a little long. It's like 49 episodes, which is the longest any Macross series has ever been. Definitely too long. You go back. I rewatched it. This is like I'm going through my first rewatch, so my second watch. And you can tell like there's certain moments where it's like we're just kind of jogging in place here. Like we could have moved on. You could probably condense the first half of it into like half the length, and it probably could have been like a very good 36 episode. It could have been a great 36 episode instead of being like a good 49 episode anime. It's got an amazing lead character. I know a lot of people are really on the fence about him because in comparison to some of the other ones where the protagonist is like a pilot, and you know a lot of times he's like a new pilot like Alto or like Hikaru from the original Macross. They're like new pilots going out, joining the military, fighting. The protagonist of Macross 7, Neki Basara, is like a singer, and his focus is on songs, and he's completely pacifistic. He's not about fighting at all. Like he goes out, he gets his own jet, and he literally goes out to the aliens and sings to them because it worked when Minmay did it, and he's like, it's gonna work when I do it. And at first it doesn't, and so he's looking like a moron. And I think a lot of people bounce off the character because he's like, why are you going out there singing like everybody else is fighting? But it's like, like it's nice to see a pacifistic protagonist for once, like a real pacifist, not like somebody that's like, hey man, I fight whenever I got to, but really I like peace. Like, no. Let's see how hard it is to really hold to that belief that you have. It also fills in a lot of the gaps for the Macross universe. So like when you look at like Macross Delta. A lot of people have problems with Macross Delta for being like this. Oh, why are the women wearing these idol suits and going out and singing and all this other shit? And it's like, yeah, if you watch Macross 7, you'll realize like, no, this is the show. The universe has always been like this. So it's just a lot of fun. Just seeing the family dynamic of like Neki's band, which is more like a family, like an adopted family than a band. But even though they do band stuff, and you get to see that, and it's really good, and it's probably peak 90s like anime art style. Like, it's not one of the ones where you're going to immediately think of it like Yu Yu Hakusho or Sailor Moon. But when you go back, the vibe is definitely there. And it's there from episode 1. And it just never slacks up. So it's a lot of fun. If you've seen Do You Remember Love? Actually, no, I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you go ahead and watch the first Macross or watch Frontier. And then go back and watch 7. You'll find a lot of stuff to love there. But I think that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Y'all know the drill. Hit that subscription button on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on TikTok. Tell all your nerdy ass friends and family about us. And do me a personal favor and have an excellent week. Peace.